Good morning and welcome to Rising. I'm Amber Duke, joined by Lindsey Granger. Our first time hosting together.
We were like, how did we miss each other for like months? But I'm so excited because I've been watching a lot of your stuff, so I feel like we're going to have a great conversation.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to it as well. First news of the day, 6 Secret Service agents are suspended without pay over failures related to last year's assassination attempt against President Trump. The agents will be off the job ranging from 10 to 42 days, according to Secret Service Deputy Director Matt Quinn. They will be allowed to return to the job once the period is over, but with diminished operational responsibility.
A source tells NewsNation 2 of them are appealing the suspension. The leave has not begun, but is expected to start shortly. The Secret Service has faced heavy criticism for the agency's response to the attack. The gunshots in the attempt grazed Trump's ear, if you remember, and killed firefighter Corey Comparatori.
Florida Congresswoman Anna Paulina Luna sounded off on the news, saying, given the shocking security failures that day, this is the absolute bare minimum. She adds, suspending 6 Secret Service agents for 10 to 42 days without pay is nothing more than a glorified vacation. Our president was nearly assassinated.
I actually agree. I think it was a core failure. When you look at just the accountability, not just the apologies. I know that the FBI director resigned last summer, because she said this was like a gross miscalculation on their part. And so usually the head of the company takes the fall for something like this. But when you think about the other people involved with like missing meetings, I read that they only had 2 official meetings before this huge event. Knowing what the stakes were and how high the tensions were, I was calling last year to bring the temperature down. There was so much around the moment of the presidency and the election that it's like not a lackadaisical job. And it's not like 30 days off, 60 days off is going to change what happened. I think people still want to know what happened, but I don't know that people, or at least the president, shouldn't want to think that these people who have acted in that manner and went through the rigorous training it takes to be in that job have just kind of like put their hands up and are back to work in a couple months.
That's right, and it actually took the second assassination attempt at Trump's club down in Florida for the Secret Service Director Kim Cheadle to resign, and she ended up being replaced by the deputy director who was on the job when these 2 incidents occurred, so probably little comfort to people who are worried about Secret Service leadership. And realistically, the people who were involved in the security failures should be fired. I mean, the fact that they're able to remain on the job and have such a short suspension, and the fact that it hasn't been served yet, right? Like, why didn't this happen immediately after this massive failure? There were so many things that went wrong that day, from not flying their own drone over the area,
right,
to failing to secure that water tower overlooking the roof that the shooter was on, to having agents forgetting their key cards as they were leaving some of the buildings where snipers were located. Not getting up on the roof because it was too sloped, even though they were on a similarly sloped roof elsewhere on the property. There were just so many things that went wrong, and I actually think if you had just plugged one of those holes, this wouldn't have happened.
Right, and I think there was also a huge misstep with local law enforcement, because you saw that there was hardly any communication, that they're trying to retroactively find better ways to communicate. But when I looked at the history of assassination attempts, I mean, it's happened to almost anyone that's been in a high profile position running for president and actually made it there or very close to there, like most recently before Trump, Hillary Clinton, and Biden. But they didn't come anywhere near affecting them. The fact that we saw blood on the next president's ear and saw him, in that state was like, that was way too close for anyone's comfort. And this is one of those mistakes where, in our industry, if you put a wrong spelling or something, that's a error that needs to be corrected. But I think it's different than if a bullet grazes the next president's ear. And so I don't think that's something where you can just like slap someone on the wrist and say, do better. It's like, you expect these people to protect you at the highest level. I mean, the sole job of the Secret Service is to protect people in office, particularly the president and former presidents. And so to me, I don't understand this. I don't understand how Trump, who's very vocal and adamant and visible in many facets, wouldn't take the steps to make sure that he makes sure who's in the Secret Service are the people protecting him, how he doesn't feel more attached to this issue. It feels like he's very quiet.
It's weird, right? I felt the same way about Trump's response. The Daily Caller's White House correspondent on a trip to Iowa last weekend asked the president if he was satisfied with the investigation into the assassination attempt, and he said that he was. But meanwhile, the public doesn't know much of anything about the attempted assassin. They don't know what his motivations were, what his background was, how he got to this point. We haven't heard much about what the Secret Service is doing to make sure that something like this doesn't happen again. So to hear Trump himself say it's basically case closed as far as I'm concerned is really bizarre.
And I think people, a lot of people in the MAGA base probably voted for Trump because they thought, okay, he's different from the establishment, bureaucracy, the status quo that doesn't give full answers. And so on something that's this close to home for him, I think people are really looking for real solid and thorough explanations, pointed fingers. And so whether that's the right solution forward to protect him in the future, it should just be hiring the best of the best. But people want answers. I think that's part of what he promised his base. And so it's, like you said, mind-boggling to me that people who are supporting him just want more answers, and he's kind of like, leave it alone. It's almost like, and I don't want to compare it to it, but it's almost like the Epstein case where they're looking for more information, and he's like, leave it alone. And people are like, what do you mean? This is why we bonded, because we're going to get every answer that other presidents wouldn't give to us.
Yeah, it is like that, and I know we're going to talk about that later in the show, but you repeatedly hear from the White House that this is the most transparent administration in American history. Caroline Leavitt has said that from the briefing room podium. You've had Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, say it. You recently had EPA Administrator Lee Zeldin say it. You've had Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy say it. And so you can say it a lot of times, but ultimately those words need to be backed up by actions. And I think on some things they have been transparent. We've seen HHS release a lot of new data recently, particularly relating to gender-affirming care for children. We've seen the Transportation Secretary releasing information on long-haul trucking, and like that's all great, but the juicy stuff is the assassination attempts and the Epstein files. And if you fail to hold your promises on that, the base is going to get riled up.
And I also have a theory that it's similar, reminding me of how President Trump handled Pete Hegseth, how he handled the Signal chat, how he handled creating a possible friction with somebody that was a loyalist. And so perhaps, I know when you pick your Secret Service, it's a very personal experience to make sure that everyone around you knows almost everything about you and is protecting you in those ways. And so maybe it's just something where he felt that he picked the most trustworthy people, and bringing in a whole new cohort has to go through several vetting processes, and also creates access for an entire new, let's say 5 or 6 people to be around him and potentially be the same people that write tell-alls. You know how many people wrote tell-alls when Trump left the last presidency. And so I think that is something that he wants to make sure to mitigate this term, as opposed to his first term, is the amount of enemies and friction that he creates during his term, so that afterwards it doesn't mess up the longevity of the Republican Party's power.
Well, it's true that he has indicated in the past that he really trusts the people that he has staffing the Secret Service cohort that surrounds him. And, I mean, he also might be thinking that some of these people literally threw their bodies on top of me. Maybe I don't want that type of person who's willing to throw themselves in the line of fire to leave. And maybe he's viewing the problem as more of a systemic leadership problem, and feels like, all right, well, Kim Cheadle's gone. You know, the new Secret Service director has been grilled in front of Congress. Maybe they've made reforms that make me happy. And so the sort of individual players who were on the ground that day were not necessarily to blame for the security failures. Maybe it was the people who were higher up in the administration. I mean, I'm just trying to get inside his brain. I don't know for sure, but he has talked about how his Secret Service team he really likes and really trusts them.
Right. And I think all in all, like, that moment of watching his fist go up, and it was a very powerful moment for him. So I think he's probably grateful that nothing more happened, but also knows that that moment really did, outside of the Biden terrible debate, you know, it changed the entire, I think, trajectory of the election, because people started to have empathy and understand, like, listen, this is way too far. The temperature is way too high. And I think that is something that he probably was like, listen, people really someone actually did die. So he's like, people really put their lives on the line, tried their best, and, you know, is trying to make sense of it. I just can't imagine almost losing my life and being like, no worries. You know, that's
it's crazy.
Well, we're going to talk about this a lot more, but you won't believe what Elon Musk is claiming now. Oh gosh, we'll fill you in next.